Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to Effects Maniac. This is Syed Mahmoud Amiri again, and welcome to another After Effects tutorial after a very long time. Alright, so this is the effect that we're going to be creating. So as you can see, it's got a lot of detail. This very cool looking high-tech sort of design which you can use for like news backgrounds and technology videos and stuff like that. So I didn't turn on like depth of field because this was like actually 4K and it was taking a lot of time, but we can use a cheap trick of sort of faking a depth of field, and then also it'll look pretty damn nice. So you can go ahead and increase the blur radius to like 15, not that much, maybe 10. Yeah, so you can see that it looks pretty good. So we'll get started with this. Alright, so I'm going to create a new composition, HD 25 frames per second. Before getting into today's video, I do want to thank the people who have already subscribed to my Patreon from the bottom of my heart. You really have helped me out a lot with your support by joining my Patreon page, and you can get some project files. And the project files for today's video is also available on my Patreon, so you can go ahead and join me there and get the project files. So first off, I want to create this element here. I want to create a circle and then a bigger circle and then some other stuff. So creating a circle is pretty easy here. So I'm going to go and create new solid. It's going to be my circle. And I'll go to Effect, Generate, and Circle. And I do want to make sure that I have the size to be this much. And then I'm just going to duplicate it, set it to Invert Circle, and set it to Stencil Alpha. And if I increase or decrease this radius, you will see that we have a circle basically. I know it may seem like a bit complicated, but you know, it's just essentially creating a mask, right? So then you can go ahead and scale this down, and I'm just going to go and hit Control D and duplicate it, and we'll create the second layer of circle. So just scale it up again, so we got it like right here. And the other thing I'm going to create is this element right here. So we're actually going to be using a very simple technique with that. So turn these off. I'm going to create a new shape here. So make sure that nothing is selected, and I'll create a shape here just like this. So like that. And I do want to duplicate this evenly and distribute them evenly. So what I'm going to do is I'll just use a bit of expression. So I'll hit P on this, and I have the position here, right? So they are both like one value. So we want to separate the dimensions. Right click, go to separate dimensions, and we only want the X position. So I'll alt click on this to type an expression, and I'm just going to type in value. So value is basically the value of this position. So I'm just going to type plus and index is basically the layer number. Like this is like 1, 2, 3. So what I'm saying is every time I duplicate this layer, every time there's a new index, which essentially means if I duplicate this layer, you need to multiply the position by like 100 pixels. So that means that if I hit Control D, it'll duplicate it and offset it 100 pixels, which is exactly what we're looking for. So if the position is not perfect for you, you can go ahead and increase and decrease it. So delete the layers and do it again, but in this case 100 is working fine for me, and I'll just go and duplicate them as needed. And for now I'm just gonna create a null object, and you will see that it will change because the null object is also included in the index. So I'm just gonna select all of these, shift select, and click on this parent and parent it to the null object. Just move it here just like that. Alright, so what I'm going to do is now I want to turn this into like a circle. So what I'll do is I'll create a new adjustment layer, and again the index is affected, so I'm going to move this again into the center. Go to adjustment layer, go to effect, distort, and polar coordinates, set it to rectangular to polar, and increase it to all the way 100%. So now you see that we have this object, but then the cool thing is if you move this, you can control the width. So if you move it up and down, you'll control the width of these objects. And if I move it on the x-axis, you will actually control the amount, the number of them, right? So even if I duplicate this one more time or twice as much, you will see that we have those objects, but then we can also just go and adjust it, and I'll even duplicate it one more time, and if I select the null object, I can go ahead and basically like fit it in just like that. Alright, so it actually gives us a lot of control, and if I want to increase or decrease the thickness of these objects, I just have to move the null object on the y-axis. So increase it or decrease it, and you will control the radius and the thickness of those objects. So I want about that much. So what I'm going to do is I'll just, go ahead and decrease them a bit, but I think that's fine. And in this case, I need to pre-compose all of these layers. So I may want these to be a bit bigger. So I'll pre-compose all these layers except the circle. So Control-Shift-C, or go to Layer, Pre-compose, and it's going to be the circular elements. And if I hit R and rotate this, you'll see that they're rotating perfectly, right? So if I turn these on, I want that to be exactly there because we have it like here, so the distance is there. So the next thing we need to create, if I turn the camera lens blur off, is this audio waveform. You can also do it with this way, but I think the easiest way would be to create an audio waveform. So I'm just going to import an audio. So I have this audio here, and I'm just going to be importing it here, and I'll create a new solid, and I do want to make sure that I have a mask on it, like a circular mask, and you can go ahead and specify the size and the position. So if I turn this on, I want it to be in the center of the comp, so I'm just going to hit Control Home, and you see that it's not fit perfectly, so I'm just going to double click on the mask and move it manually with the arrow key, so just about the same size of those other elements. And I'm just going to set this to none. So I'll go into Effect, Generate Audio Spectrum. So it's a very cool effect, so I'll turn the masks off. I'll set the path to be the mask 1 and the audio layer to be this free audio layer. So you have this thing here. We're only going to need one frame, so you do want to go and increase the audio duration to get something that looks cool. And I want to go to side B because I don't want to see it on the inside of this object. So you want to make sure to find a spot that you have like peaks, and you can increase the frequency bands and decrease the thickness to 2 and decrease the softness to 0 because we want it to be hard. And you can adjust the frequencies. So maybe I want it to be like this and increase the height. So how high you want it to be, maybe you want it to be like this, but I don't want it to be that much, and I can increase the frequency of these objects a bit, just like that. And what I do want to do is I'll change the colors to be white. We can specify the color later, but in this case I'm just going to set it to like blue up front because just like that. And what I want to do is just pre-compose this as the audio spectrum, and I want it to be in this frame. So I'll turn off the audios, right click, time, and freeze frame. So we have this frame here, so just like that. And you want to sort of animate your objects as you go on. So I want it to have this random sort of movement. So what I'm going to do is just alt click on this and type in like wiggle. I want it to be like once every second and probably like 40 degrees, just like that. So if I play this, you'll see that we have some random movement here, which looks pretty cool. So let's see if we have the movement with our audio spectrum. No, that is static. Alright, so the next element that we're going to create is these sort of small objects here. So what I'm going to do is I'll go here and I will go ahead and select nothing and create a shape here. So just like that. And I'm just going to go and add a repeater right away. So yeah, and the number of copies is the number of copies that you want. So I'll probably add it like 20 copies. And I'm going to go into the transform repeater, set the position to 0, and increase the rotation to what? The rotation is basically, if you want to have like a perfect circle, you need to divide these 360 by this number of copies. So 360 divided by 20 is going to be 18. And I don't need to mess up with the scale here, so I'm just going to go to transform and bring down the scale. So you'll see that they are there, but you see we have some weird rotations here. So I'm actually going to go into the rectangle itself, go to fill, and there's the transform. So I'm just going to go and add some rotation, just like that. So you see that we have it right here. And we can also go and increase or decrease the scale of them. So you can go and increase or decrease the width and the height and everything. But then the rotation, we just need to increase it a bit more. I think it looks fine, but we don't want it to be that thick. Just like that. Just like that. All right. And if you wanted to scale it a bit more, you can go into the transform and scale it up. But maybe I don't want it to be like that much. It's okay. So then we have these elements, these lines here. So I've actually used like a different method for them, but we can also use the same thing here. So I'm just going to go and find these circular elements here, these comp, duplicate it in the project, double click, and I just want to move the null object into the y-axis. So just like that, and I'll bring it here and move it here on top. So we have it, and I'm just gonna scale this down a little bit, just like that. It kind of looks like the Iron Man arc reactor, but I think it's fine. So I'm just gonna take the audio spectrum, scale it down a little bit, and you see that they are also, it's moving. So what I'm going to do is I'll also go select this, hit R, alt click, wiggle 1, 30 or 45, so that we'll have a bit of movement here. Or I don't want it to move randomly, just time multiplied by like 20, so continuous movement, just like that. And let's see, we'll create some other elements, and then we'll move on to creating some cool elements. All right, so we have this big ring here. So I'm just going to duplicate this circle layer, and I'll increase the circle effect to be that much, and also the second one, the radius for them. So I want it to be really big, so probably like 450, just like that. So we have this element here, and the cool thing is we want to turn everything into a 3D layer. So if I create a camera, Control Alt Shift C, or go into Layer, New Camera, 35 or probably like 24 millimeter, because we wanted to have like a close-up view of this. The circle can't really be like a 3D layer because we need to pre-compose them. So pre-compose, okay, make them a 3D, and now we have it, right? So we do want to sorry, we need to scale this down here, just like that. All right, so again, I'm going to go back here and turn it into a 3D layer, and now you can see that we have our objects here. So what I'm going to do is create a little bit of a depth here between them. So I'll just move like this circular elements up, and the audio spectrum as well. Just move it up a little bit, and then the circle elements, you know, we can't really do anything with them, but then you can just go and take these. What are these here? So these ones, just like that, move them down, audio spectrum, and that, and the shape layer. So we'll just increase it here. So we have this 3D layer, right? And they are rotating here. And the next part is going to be element 3D, so we'll use element 3D here. And we may also want to add some color later, so for now I'm just going to go and add a new solid is going to be the element. And if you don't have element 3D, you can go ahead and get it from Video Copilot. And we're also going to be using a model from the Motion Design 2 pack. So if you don't have it, don't worry, because I am going to be adding a rendered version of this, because I can't really, I'm going to go to Tech Components, go down here. I'll add this 7 and 6. So I want to make sure to add like a rendered version of them. And I'll include the project files in my Patreon page, so you can go ahead and use it. I will not be able to, of course, include the model and everything, but I'm just gonna add, a 1280 by 720p sort of clip for you, so that you can use it in this project and follow along. All right. So I'm just gonna go into Group 1, Particle Look, Particle Rotation, and just rotate this so that it sort of matches with our object. I'll put it below my things here, and I'm just gonna scale it up, not so much, so just like that. And I can also sort of move it for it to like match and to be in the circle, just like that. And yeah, so they are rotating just like that, and we want this element to be rotating as well. So what I'm going to do is I'll go into my particle rotation here, and if you don't know about Element 3D, I can also tell me in the comments section, and I'll do some basic Element 3D tutorials. So I'm just going to take the the Y rotation. I'll set this to half. The Y rotation, and I'll just alt click here and type in time multiplied by 20. So you'll have this effect here. And what I want to do is I'll just duplicate this, because I want to have all these smaller sort of details as well. So duplicate this, and I'll go into the output and change the type polygon mode to point cloud. And I want to go and scale this up. So go to particle size, make sure it's big enough. And yeah, so we have a lot of elements. And now I'm going to go to Effect, Generate, and Fill. So I'll fill it with like a technological blue color. All right. And I'll set this to Add, of course. And we don't want it to be that bright, so I'm just going to decrease the opacity here. I'll set this to full, and I'll select my camera, and I'll move in here because we want a close-up shot here. So what I'm going to do is now add some like coloring here, so to make it look good. But before we do that, I'm just going to take all these elements except the Element 3D layers, Control D, and I'll just move them down here because I want to have like some details. So I'll just move them up, and I can color code them to be like peach, hit T, and decrease the opacity. So it will make it look like much more like detailed, and like there's a lot going on and stuff. But I think it'll make it look even cooler. So just like that, I may even take this circular element number 2, scale it down here so that we can see it a little better. Alright, so for coloring these elements, what I'm going to do is I'll select all of these elements. These copies are actually like the opacity is down, but then I'm also going to select my main elements and decrease the opacity to like 90%, so that they're not like fully bright. So the other thing I forgot to do is I need to go to my Element 3D layer, and I will go and apply this black gloss material to all of those elements, because I want them to be dark and sort of reflective, and hit OK. So we have this look. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'll create a new light, which is like blue and intensity 100. Okay. And because all of our elements are blue or white and 3D, they will be affected by the light. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'll create a new solid, which is also like sort of blue. So hit OK. And I have this look here. So what I'm going to do is I'll put this above all these elements. I'll set the mode to add, and I'm just going to just mask off like this much of it and hit F and feather it out just like that. Maybe sort of, yeah, do it just like that and decrease the opacity. And I'm just going to duplicate it a couple of times and just hit M, MM, and increase the sort of general reach or the expansion. And I will just go ahead and decrease the opacity of this one as well to be like not so bright. And I'll go ahead and do one more time and increase the expansion, and maybe put this like in the middle of some of these elements. So you want to create like different layers of depth here. So the next thing I'm going to do is I will duplicate one more for, you know, the background. So I'll put it all the way at the back. Hit F, feather it out a lot. So we've created this, and now we want to create some contrast between the layers. So I'm just going to go and create an adjustment layer, put it all the way here. I'll go to Effect, Color Correction, and Curves, and I'll, you know, give it some like contrast like this. And the cool thing is they're like all 3D layers, so you can just go and change the view, so and it'll all sort of update and it'll look pretty cool. But then the next thing is that you know, we'll go ahead and add these lights here. So these lights, and I'm gonna go, maybe we've added like too much of a glow, so I'll probably, you know, decrease one of them and probably take this and decrease the opacity because we don't want to have that much glow, but then we can add it later as well. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'll add some glows with optical flares, or you can also do with regular sort of an effect. But I'm actually going to go and create a black solid and set it to OF. Go to Effect, Video Copilot, Optical Flares again. And if you don't have it, again, I'm just going to put an image of this glow so that you'll be able to use it. But clearly it's just very simple, so I'm just going to increase the scale just like that. I will put an image like this in the project file so you can find it in my Patreon page. So I'll go and set this to add, and I will put it like here onto the side, just like that. And I'll give it some contrast just like that, and probably like a blue color. Just like that. And also I'm going to duplicate this, Control D, select the position to be here, and I'll probably set it to like what, reddish, sort of a reddish color. So we want it to be a bit bright, not so much. And I'll add a blur, Gaussian blur as well to make it like very smooth, and repeat the edge pixels. And I'll copy this, maybe set this to 100, copy this and add it to my blue layer as well. And then as you can see here, we have clearly a lot more elements, but we can go and add it, and we are definitely much more closer than we are in this shot. So I'm just going to go with close up, just like that. And you know, the thing that is going to make it look cooler, and I know that I haven't put like so much time in this because it's just a tutorial, and I've worked on this for like what, 3-4 hours. Decrease the opacity for these, and if you turn on the, you know, if you select the camera and hit AA and turn on the depth of field and increase the aperture and go ahead and decrease the focus distance to be 100 or closer to the camera, or probably like 300 or even 400. I want this area to be in focus, so probably 500. Yeah, just like that. So now you'll have like a very, very beautiful effect. And then what you can do in order to increase the detail of this. So you can take this element layer and duplicate it, and I'll put one more copy, move it up. So I probably want it to be like somewhere here, just like that, or even move it up to have that sort of detail. But then you also want to go to the particle rotation and just change the value, right? So hit UU because we have an expression, and I want to change it plus like what, 100, because I don't want it to look the same. So you can see that it looks pretty nice and pretty cool, and you can go ahead and render this out. And I know it's looking quite different than the one we showed in the example, but we can also add a curves effect again here and basically give it like some contrast here again. And yeah, it looks pretty nice. I may want to add like a tint effect, 20%, so it's not like so colorful. But then you can add as much detail as you want, and try to get something like this. But I think this one is looking much more prettier, and you can go ahead and render this out and use it in your projects. So so you can go ahead and try it into your projects. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you learned something from it, and if you have any questions, make sure to put them in the comment section below. I'll be more than glad to answer them. Until next time, enjoy working.